Right after the protest, my heart was pounding. I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible.
They tortured me to try to break me, but all it did was make me more determined.
The Myanmar junta is well known for its ferocious response to public dissents. Especially since the 2021 coup, the regime's fight to stay in power has only intensified. Yet the opposition continues to organize protests on the streets of Burmese cities, despite the risks. The protest movement has evolved, along with efforts to crush it by the ruling State Administration Council, or SAC. Hello, and welcome to Doh Athan, a weekly podcast about human rights stories from Myanmar. It's brought to you by Fundación Hirondelle. This episode is produced by a Doh Athan journalist. Names and voices may have been changed to protect contributors. On a street in Yangon, about 30 young people gathered with torches and red flags, demanding lower commodity prices and an end to military conscription. Ko Bieta, in his 20s, is a leading activist in Yangon's anti-dictatorship movement.
That day, we ran in with red flags while others held torches. The crowd didn't expect a flash mob protest, but when they saw us, they just started clapping, almost like a reflex.
A flash mob is a type of protest, usually short, spontaneous, and unpredictable. Sometimes even participants don't know about them in advance. Due to the serious dangers faced by protesters, these protests could only be filmed with phone cameras, not professional sound recorders. Nan Kay, a youth protester, played a crucial role as a lookout, keeping a watchful eye on the streets for approaching police. She is a member of a group representing university alumni associations.
Even with scouts, it was nerve-wracking. I was very nervous and had to check constantly in every direction, scared that someone might suddenly grab me from behind. I kept an eye out for the enemy, and I had to stay alert for both myself and my group. I felt anxious the whole time.
Protesters have to be extremely cautious since the city is under tight security, with SAC staff quarters nearby. This flash mob gathered quickly on the street, demonstrated for just a minute, and then dispersed just as quickly. For the past 4 years since the coup, Yangon has been firmly under SAC control, with strict public security measures in place. Despite the risks, anti-government protests continue to appear from time to time in the city's crowded markets and streets. This protest in South Okala Township was against frequent power cuts in the military conscription law. Nan Kay has been active in organizing protests since the coup. She was imprisoned in Loiko in 2021 for revolutionary activities. This protest was her first since her release in 2023.
We told our people to be on standby. I got there early, and when I spotted 2 or 3 young people on the street, I knew they were ours. Once enough of us were there, we lit the torches, started the rally, and the crowd followed the torches.
Although it lasted only a minute, Nan Kay said the fear stayed with her.
Right after the protest, my heart was pounding. I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. I was the only one left on the street, and I panicked. I ran into the first alley I saw.
The plan was to disperse quickly, but Nan Kay got lost and separated from her group. But later she managed to reunite with her group on the street and avoid arrest. Ko Bieta, who leads rallies, explains why they continue despite the risks.
People are suffering, but they have no freedom to express their frustrations and rejection of the status quo. There is no space to speak out. That's why we do this, to show that we stand with them, that we are their voice.
The SAC does not allow protests or public gatherings in any city under its control, responding with violence in its relentless pursuit of dissent. He said that closed-circuit television cameras, or CCTVs, are installed everywhere in the city and used to track opposition activities. So the protesters need a strategy to avoid being monitored.
The whole city is under surveillance, with a control center watching everything. Even if we found a CCTV-free spot, SAC patrols were everywhere. We had to track their movements, like how the military trucks and police cars patrol, and study their patterns at least a week in advance.
Even with careful planning, protests often don't go as expected. 2 days after the successful protest in Yangon Township, Ko Bieta got a bad feeling. 4 of the protesters stopped answering their phones. He knew something was off. I
couldn't reach them. I called over and over for 30 minutes, nothing. Within 45 minutes, we knew something was up. We had to move immediately that night.
4 were arrested. He suspects they were tracked through CCTV surveillance. The arrested youths were friends of Ko Bieta and Nan Kay. After the arrests, the entire group had to go into hiding immediately.
I had nothing but my phone and the pajama I was wearing. My comrade who was living with me grabbed a laptop and some banners. That was it. That's how we ran. My whole body was shaking. We had nowhere to sleep. We just kept moving all night.
For safety, they move between different locations several times a month. This is a common experience for urban protesters. They must always be ready to relocate. Finding new and safe places to stay is often their biggest challenge.
It's exhausting, always running, always hiding. I've lost count of how many times I've moved just in Yangon. And there are other issues like residence documents, family registries, and the risk of conscription. I feel like a fugitive. Every time I hear news of an arrest, I have to check who was taken and whose name came up.
These young activists risk their lives to protest. Simply for calling publicly for freedom of expression, they face the risk of brutal interrogations and long prison sentences. Several former prisoners told Doh Athan that the authorities used torture to try to force them to abandon politics. Ko Min Kant, a man in his 20s, knows firsthand. He was arrested in 2022 for his involvement in the urban resistance movement and was tortured in the notorious interrogation centers Shey Ji and Shwe Pitar. After he was released on bail, he continued protesting.
I have one belief. I'll fight until the military dictatorship falls. I don't care how long it takes. They tortured me to try to break me, but all it did was make me more determined. If I ever feel down, I remind myself that even if the rest of society doesn't care, I'm doing this to free myself.
His goal is to keep the public engaged in politics through strong and public opposition.
It's easy for Yangon to return to normal, but I don't want people to forget that the path we're walking is filled with blood. Fighting alone isn't enough. The revolution only succeeds if the public stays engaged, both through politics and military offensives.
Mandalay, another city under SAC control, faces a different situation than Yangon. Armed conflict is nearby, close enough to hear at times. In some places, the clashes are intense. Some believe that street protests are no longer necessary, since revolutionary forces are advancing on the battlefield. Young activists continue to find ways to protest.
People get motivated when they hear about the battles and city takeovers, but when the revolutionary forces lose, they lose hope again. They think, why isn't this over already? Why haven't we won yet? So, for us, we have to let the public know that this is a marathon, not a sprint. That it won't end just because the PDF took over a city. We need the public's participation too. It takes all of us.
Ko Pyo, a young activist from Mandalay, believes the revolution will only succeed if military operations are connected with political actions.
I walk this path knowing exactly what it means. This is our mindset, a student's mindset. When people started protesting in February of 2021, there's something I always used to say, that a strong mindset leads to freedom. We may hesitate at times, or take a break or feel depressed in a given situation, but it is important to keep going, without ever stopping.
Urban activists share the belief that psychological warfare, keeping the public engaged, is just as important as military action. They are working for a revolution that involves the public. Ko Min Kant remains committed to the cause, using different methods to attract public participation. Before the coup as a teenager, he enjoyed poetry and music, staying out of politics. He says he sacrificed his dreams, hobbies, family, and freedom to join the revolution. Now, his only focus is resistance.
Since my last release, I fear nothing. I just worry for my comrades. If they catch me again, I know I'll die. I'll probably get shot on the street. I've already made up my mind that it doesn't matter. It's the same fate.
He says that after the revolution, if he is still safe, all he wants is his freedom back.
I have no plans after this. I'm here because of the situation. If the country's free one day, I just want to be a young person again, to live freely. That's all.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Doh Athan. We would welcome your feedback on social media, and please follow or subscribe to our pages. You can also listen to our podcast via the Doh Athan Facebook page. They can also be found on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Telegram, and Instagram. You can listen on Voice of America shortwave radio in Burmese twice a month, on the second and fourth Saturday nights from 9 to 10 p.m. Yangon time, and the following Sunday mornings from 6 to 7 a.m. The program can also be streamed on the VOA Burmese Facebook page. Please tune in again for our next episode.